Have we seen the last of Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum as teammates? We're diving deeper into a painful offseason right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Beantown, be ever ready. It's the C's. Who else could it be? What they gon' say now? Screaming like JT Karalis. We kept the madness every game, every practice. Primetime Depp and D White on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Astute listeners will realize that I've shortened the open to eliminate references to back-to-back because that hasn't happened, which is why we are here talking about a very painful offseason. Now, we were going to talk about the painful offseason no matter what. We were hoping to have a championship to kind of cushion that fall. So we're moving forward. Thank you for listening, being an everydayer, joining me Monday through Friday here on the podcast as I, excuse me, cough. Still nursing. I don't know. Maybe Kristaps Porzingis gave me something. Thank you for being here Monday through Friday. Thank you for joining me on the YouTube page. I'm John Karalis. Aside from me having a frog in my throat right now, as soon as I started talking, pardon me, I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I've been covering the team for 20 years. And I'm powering through the start of this show. I was fine, and then the show started, and I'm going to power through here. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Go download that FanDuel app. Make your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Later on, we'll get into the question of, does Jaylen Brown need to be traded? At what point, if he does, will that happen? But first, let's start diving deeper into just how the Celtics accomplished this first goal of getting under the second apron. We're going to do that with our good friend Keith Smith from Spotrac and the front office show. Keith, what's going on, my man?
A lot, John. It's like we were talking before the show. It's like living in two worlds here. You're trying to finish out watching the playoffs while getting prepped for the off season. The NBA calendar does not leave you much time in between. It's pretty much season ends and the draft's a few days to a week later, and then we're right into free agency on the heels of that. So there's quite a bit happening, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you got people like me in your DMs being, hey, would this work if the Celtics do this? Oh, what about this? And like, oh, man, I should leave Keith alone and just ask him these things on the podcast because you're probably sitting there like, okay, I've got 2 minutes to spend with my family. Oh, wait, Karalis is DMing. So apologize for hijacking.
You're like family now, so it is.
Yeah, I'm like the uncle that people like roll their eyes when he walks away. Oh, boy. All right, let's get the bourbon, dust that off. Let's give it to him. Maybe he'll calm down. All right, so step one here. We know the way I've been phrasing it, and you tell me if it's wrong. Step one has to be get under the second apron. They have no choice. You have to get under the second apron because the rules are too punitive. Your draft picks start to like drop to the bottom if you don't. That inherently cuts the tax bill, but then I think the tax bill has to happen in two phases at least. Like, I don't think they're going to get under the tax this year. Or do they? I guess. So let's just kind of lay out, as you see it, the baseline for what the Celtics are trying to accomplish, how they accomplish it.
Yeah, so I'm going to do something everybody loves on a podcast and even an audio and visual podcast. I'm going to throw a whole bunch of numbers at people.
Yes, okay.
They're super fired up, but I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Celtics are miles and miles over the salary cap. There's no chance they're going to have salary cap space. There will not be a player in free agency that way. So that's the easy part. Eliminate all that. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about mid-level exceptions or any of that stuff.
Right.
Take all that out of your vocabulary. Not happening.
So just to be clear for everybody, whatever the Celtics do, that does not open room to sign somebody.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the next set of numbers I'm going to throw at you. We'll go kind of in reverse order since that's the way you kind of talked about it. Second apron. Right now, conservatively, about $22.7 million over that second apron.
Okay.
That's factoring in their draft pick this year. That's factoring in open roster spots, filling things out. That's not re-signing Luke Cornett, re-signing Al Horford. You re-sign those guys to even minimum contracts. That adds to that bill. and pushes you over even further. So first apron, about 34.6 million over the first apron. Then the tax line, they're about 42.7 million over the tax. So kind of chances are second apron, yeah, possible. Pretty good chance that's doable to get under the second apron. First apron, that's probably 2 to 3 transaction cycles. And I'm probably going to repeat that term multiple times. When I say a transaction cycle, that is the offseason is one, the trade deadline's another one, and then the next one would be the following offseason, the 2026 offseason.
Mm-hmm.
To get all the way out of the tax, that's maybe by a third transaction cycle, you might be able to pull that off. We're not even really we don't even fully know how concerned they are about getting all the way out of the tax.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the Golden State Warriors, they're the team that kind of comes to mind. We're in a little bit of a similar spot with the Celtics, whereas, man, we're so far over all these problems. They let Klay Thompson walk in the summer. It ended up being a sign and trade, but they let him go away. Then they were able to do things where that freed up a significant amount of spending ability for them. They basically used all of their flexibility to bring in Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson on dual sign and trades. One of that was part of the Thompson deal as well, but that's how they got those guys. But they ended up back in the tax again, even though they did everything to get under the apron. So there's a good chance Celtics could do some work with the aprons. The tax, that's probably going to take a little while longer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the third season in the apron is where you start to see your draft picks.
The second apron.
Yeah. So the Celtics have been over the second apron 2 seasons.
Correct.
So now let's be clear. It's not the start of the season, it's how they finish the season.
Yes, and that's extremely important. It is basically it's next trade deadline. When we get to the 2026 trade deadline, so roughly 9-ish months from now, if they are not under the second apron, that's kind of it, because there's no real way to get there after the trade deadline. So
right.
that's the kind of, if it is a mandate or a must that they get under the second apron, and I tend to work in the realm of it's probably pretty close.
Yeah.
Then that's it. That's the last chance. You really want to get there by the end of the offseason if you can, just because it's a lot easier to get there at that point.
What I'm trying to figure out with the Celtics is where are they goal wise? Is it, look, you have to, I think they have to get under the second apron, because you don't, like 7 years from now, you don't want to have those picks at the bottom, because at that point the Celtics will probably be tanking, rebuilding, and that's why they pushed that's why they made it 7 years and not 2 years, because who cares 2 years from now if you're a top 5 team, you're already at the bottom anyway. No one cared. So, but that 7 years out is when you're supposed to be rebuilding, and that's when it's really punitive. But the Jayson Tatum injury makes this throws it all in the air here, because if he wasn't hurt and you start the season with him, you'd say, okay, you know what? Just roll with it, get close to the bottom of the second apron, and then figure out the least painful way to dip under it right at the deadline and deal with it. And you get to that offseason and be done. I don't know what the Celtics do here, what they feel with Jayson Tatum. Like, is it, if you see a team, we're trying to read the tea leaves, if you see them go into the season like right at that second apron line, then that would, I think, indicate maybe they think Tatum's going to come back, and they're going to push it as far as they can, and then see, okay, at the deadline, we wave and stretch Kata or something like that, or you keep Sam Hauser for a little while and you trade him for nothing at the deadline, and you get under it that way, and that's how you kind of toe the line and still remain a contender.
Yeah, they could absolutely do that. The other option would be let's live in the positive fantasy world, because we're going to spend a lot of time in the negative side here. let's say it's like, man, we're actually playing a lot better than we thought, and things are really going our way. And, Baylor Shireman became, now all of a sudden he's a 12-point-a-night guy and he's playing great. And we feel really good. And you know what? This Jayson Tatum getting his surgery done, within the day after or so of getting hurt, like he's now going to be back at, the middle of March or something like that. And we really feel good about where we're headed. Maybe they're like, you know what? We're not really worried about this second apron stuff. We'll deal with whatever the penalties are. Because here's the thing with the apron stuff, just to be very clear with everyone here. These were all phased in rules. So I think there's been a little bit of like mixed messaging with how the rules work. Because there were how it really is it's if you're 2 of the preceding 4 years that you were over, then when you're over in that 3rd year, that's when you get tagged with it. So the Celtics are potentially facing a 3rd year in the future. It's going to be a little easier to work because you'll have a little bit more of that buffer time to work, because it's going to basically be at that point of like 3 out of 4 years. Then on the back side of that, let's say they don't get out of the second apron, draft pick becomes frozen, can't be traded, gets moved to the end of the first round. If they don't get out, you can then, as long as you are out for 3 of the next 4 years, coming out of that, you then get out of the apron. The draft pick becomes unfrozen at that point, and it frees back up. So it's not, if they're over the second apron, it's not great, because now you're kind of, all right, we're stuck with that 2032 pick. It's not in a good spot. But then if they were out for the next, let's say 27, 28, and 29, or 28, 29, and 30, any of those years you get out, the pick unfreezes and you go back to where it should be in the draft order, and you can trade it again. So it's not this is as I put it with a friend of mine the other day, you can freeze it, but then you can start the thawing process over a couple years and get it unfrozen and have it back the way you want over a period of years.
So getting under the second apron this year, it's not as much of a priority as it seems.
Not for the draft pick part. I mean, it is, because you want to have the most flexibility. You want to be able to do whatever you want with that pick down the line. You'd rather not get to a point where it's ever frozen. But if it gets frozen, that's not the end of the world. The harder part of not getting under the second apron would be all of the other stuff. You are basically, as a second apron team, you are restricted to making trades where you send out 1 player at a time, because you can't aggregate, and you are restricted to taking back the same amount of money or less. And I'm going to repeat that part again. The same amount of money or less.
Yes.
People are getting super hung up on, no, it can only be the same amount of money. That's if you're acquiring a player coming in, but you can always take back less money. The other thing is, when you trade a player out, let's say it's Kristaps Porzingis, $30.7 million. The Celtics could take back 2 players who make $15 million in that trade. As long as you're taking back less money, you could take back 3 $10 million players. Heck, you could take back 6 $5 million players. It doesn't matter, as long as you're taking back less money. So that's the key there. The next thing is, in a trade, you can't do sign-in trades. So you can't do any of that because you're over the apron. So you're stuck there. So your trades are very limited. You can't even buy a draft pick. So it's not one where the new ownership's like, hey, let's buy an extra second-round pick. You can't do that. You're pretty much limited to those very restricted trades, signing your own free agents, like re-signing them, whatever bird rights you have. They could give Luke Cornett a max contract if they wanted to. Then you are limited to signing veteran minimum contracts, and you're limited to signing your draft picks. You can always sign your draft picks too. That's if you start out as an over the second apron team, which is where the Celtics are, at least to start the offseason. You want to start the process to get under the apron to free up. The draft pick is certainly part of it, the future draft pick. But like we covered, you can still kind of take care of that if you need to down the line. But you don't want to be saddled with all the other stuff that makes it extremely difficult to make moves and build out the team and do the things you want to do.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty and answer the question, does Jaylen Brown have to be traded? Have we seen the last of Tatum and Brown together? We'll do that when we come back. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Go ahead and download that FanDuel app. Get into these NBA playoffs. Both conference finals are going, and whether it's a game-winning shot, a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get into the action. FanDuel makes it very easy to stay in the game before tip-off, live during the game. There's player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, and you have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you want to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds, you can do that. If someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is not shooting well and you say, okay, second half, I think he's going to go for 10 points, then go ahead and bet that over whatever they set and go with, somebody's rebounds, like Chet Holmgren's rebounds or something. And you can get a $200 bonus if your first $5 bet hits. So there's money to be made here. Make it a good first $5 bet, and you can get that $200 bonus right now. So if you're new to FanDuel, this is the perfect time to sign up. Head on over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Set your limits, set your budget, use the tools that are available to you as soon as you sign in. There are tools that ask you to set your budget. Use them. Bet only what you can afford to lose and have some fun. Don't go overboard. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go to Locked On Big Board. Locked On NBA Big Board should be your second listen. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to this podcast. All right, let's get back to Keith, who, all right, you've calmed my nerves a little bit about the second apron. I still think that they're going to make it a priority to get underneath. Yep. And I think they should. I don't think they should mess around with it. What do you think is the proper sequencing for getting under that second apron this season?
Yeah. So here's the thing. There's exactly one team with max cap space this summer. That's the Brooklyn Nets. I'm sure if Brad Stevens says, hey, remember when we took a whole bunch of draft picks from you before you took over, Sean Marks, and we drafted the core of a championship team? You want a couple picks to eat contracts for us? I've been saying Sean Marks should start on June 30th at 6 p.m. standing in front of the Barclays Center with a sign that says, bring us your tired, you're hungry, you're huddled masses. Just send them with a draft pick, because that's where they're at, right? They're the only team with meaningful cap space. So that's where it gets a little tricky for Boston. I don't think, because of where the team is and where I think they would like to get back to in relatively short order, they don't scream like, let's use draft picks that way. They want to use, we've talked about in the past, I think Brad to some extent is, when we're close, I'm going to use picks to go get guys that can lift us, right? Derek White. I'm going to use a pick to get a Drew Holiday. I'm going to make things happen with draft picks versus just shedding salary. I also don't think Porzingis is an expiring contract. Drew Holiday, contract's not great in a couple years. I fully own that. But I think teams around the league, and talking with enough teams, that were like, yeah, you're not going to return a massive return. You're not hitting a home run in a trade like that, but you shouldn't have to give up draft assets to get off his contract. So now I think what they're going to be looking to do is, let's get in a position where what we're going to have happen is, let's trade out Kristaps Porzingis. I'm going to call it $30 million just because the math's easier for my simple brain. Let's trade him out and let's bring back $20 million in a trade. Let's bring back $22 million in a trade. Mm-hmm. Maybe what we can do is, hey, Nets, to eat $30 million for Porzingis, you want a draft pick, but this other team will take them. What if we give you one of their the $15 million player back and we take the other one? Now Boston saved $15 million and Brooklyn gets a $15 million guy. Maybe the Celtics are like, here's a second rounder thanks for being a good, pal. Sure, and that's how you can start to chip away. One move to get out of the apron, very, very unlikely. It's not probably going to happen because, again, it's $22.7 million. The likelihood of making a trade where you take nothing back outside of Sam Hauser, whose contract conveniently fits inside anybody who has the non-taxpayer MLB. That's an easy one where, if, like you said, if you got to the trade deadline, it's like, we're not really going anywhere. and we're still $7 million over the second apron. We don't want to trigger the bad draft pick stuff and all those other things. That's an easy one to say. Who needs a shooter? Like, you want Sam Hauser? Kick us 2 seconds and we're good, and off you go. That could be where that goes. So I think the big thing is it's going to be iterative. It's going to be Drew Holiday goes out and you bring back somebody who makes, $28 million, and that chipped $4 million. And then Porzingis goes up, probably multi-team deals where guys are moving around from team to team, and you just kind of chip away at it until you end up there. That's probably the direction that this goes.
I've been floating the crazy scenario. That's one of the things I DM'd you about, the Holiday for like Tobias Harris, and then you take Tobias Harris and you flip him to Washington for Marcus Smart, and then you take Marcus Smart and you go, okay, Chicago to Kevin Huerter, okay, and you end up with $18 million guy for one season. He's a shooter, and then you let him walk after next year. Like I feel like, and it probably doesn't go exactly like that, like you mentioned in your reply to me. It probably just gets folded into a bigger single trade.
Yeah. But
I think I would love to see a sequence of events where the Celtics move one guy, it kind of like dominoes down to a cheaper guy that it's an expiring contract. And then next year you give Al Horford a 1-year deal, and maybe you give Luke Cornett a 1-year deal, and you say, okay, we're going to try, because it's all about this balance. It's all about this, like, do you have to tear it all down now? Because this is what the Jayson Tatum injury has created. A 1-year complete tear down, just everything goes. You want to get under the tax? No problem. Jaylen Brown goes out. Everybody goes out. You just basically keep Jayson Tatum, Derek White, a couple of other guys.
You want to know what it looks like when Peyton Pritchard gets 30 shots a night. Here we go.
Right. Exactly. Right? Starting like, point guard. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so that there's that scenario versus we have one more legit chance, one more, like, we believe Jayson is coming back. We're going to minimize the damage as much as we can. Maybe Drew, maybe Porzingis goes, and when you get just far enough under the second apron where you stay under that second apron, but you deal with the rest later. You've lost 2 guys who, if we're being real, this past season, Porzingis didn't give him anything in the playoffs. Drew Holiday didn't really give him a ton in the playoffs. So you're like, okay, we've got Tatum, Brown, Derek White. We're kind of rolling with most of these guys. We've got a couple of new role players. You're back to the pack. You're not like fighting for the top seed, I don't think. But at least the fans can be like, we have a potential winner. We're going for it one more time. So I think the Celtics are trying to figure out if that one more time is there.
To kind of add to that a little bit, I think if this was 10-ish years ago, when Achilles injuries were like, this sucks because now his career's over. He's never going to be the same guy again. And, maybe he comes back, he's an okay standstill shooter or whatever, but like, we're out. I think then the tear this thing down, like rip it down to anybody who's making more than like $10 million. We're doing what we can to get them moving on, and we're going to even push to get under the tax. Like we're going to, do everything we can. That would have been a lot more likely. Now, I think what they want to be very cautious of is, and I'm going to say this in a way, of course, Jayson Tatum's going to be around the team plenty over the course of the next year, but you don't want him walking into training camp in 2026. And it's like the Will Smith meme where he's looking around. He's like, where is everybody? Right. Because we emptied the locker room out, because then at that point, Jayson Tatum's like, man, I just busted my tail to get back. I'm not coming back to be like, cool, let's be the 6th seed. Like, he's coming back to try to compete and win. And you don't want it to be, hey, guess what? We're starting over with you and 4 draft picks and Peyton Pritchard and Baylor Shireman. Good luck. Let's go. Now, is there a world where it's like, hey, we got a mega haul for a bunch of guys? all right, yeah, maybe that is the direction to go. I just don't, I'm more with you. I don't think that's where they go at all, unless the indications are, all right, you know what, Al Horford wants to play, but he doesn't want to play on a team that's just a first round exit team, wants to compete. Luke Cornett's like, man, I have a chance to get 10 million bucks from somebody. Like, in that, I know that sounds crazy, but that could be a thing this summer. It's a pretty weak free agent class. So that could be a thing. And then if it's like, you know what, Jaylen Brown, like, maybe the knee's worse than they're letting on. Maybe there's other issues with that. And they're like, it's time to go in a different direction. Sure. But I think the more likelihood is it's probably Holiday, Porzingis, Hauser, 2 of 3 in that group that get moved on. And maybe, again, it's a little bit of a process like you laid out. It could be a series of deals. It could be one big multi-team deal where a bunch of pieces and parts are moving around, and you get back at it and say, you know what, we're going to compete. We're going to do what we can to try to win enough games to be okay while clearing up our apron issues. And then in the summer of 2026, we're no longer an apron team. And now we can move forward and start to rebuild this team with our guys back again.
So that brings us to the question of how much longer does Jaylen Brown have in a Boston uniform? Let's answer that when we come back. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA and Locked On NBA Game Night, both on the same feed. Locked On NBA Game Night covers the one game that's happening a night now, in-depth coverage of the conference finals, and then Locked On NBA covers all the big stories, including this Boston Celtics story. I'm sure is going to be part of the overall discussion. This is the big question here, Keith. Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, we all have these dreams of drafting a guy, he stays in the same team forever, and it just doesn't really happen anymore. It doesn't happen like that.
Yep.
They are going to make, in a couple of years, like next year, they combine to make 107. The next year after that, they combine to make 115. And I think the tax line in the 26-27 season is somewhere around a little over 200 million. So if you can't build a team, you can't build a legitimate team with Tatum Brown making 115 and then splitting 85 million between the next 12 guys. You just can't do that. You can't put together a quality team. So one of these guys is going to have to go, right?
Maybe. So here's where I think the thought process of salary dump Porzingis, salary dump Holiday gets a little broken, because I think what the Celtics want to do is let's move them while bringing in enough salary that can still be a number we can then move whoever that is to do what they did now, which was, all right, we're not good enough, right? They knew that post-Warriors series, we're close, but we're not good enough. The Heat lost in the 7 games, reaffirmed that, and it was, we have to get better. They went out and got Porzingis, Holiday. They went out and got him, let's be clear, but kind of landed in their laps a little bit where it was
sure.
Yeah, thank God they traded him and they didn't make it a 3-team trade where he went somewhere else instead. And we were able to, here's a whole bunch of stuff, but they did make it happen. Now, that's why I don't think they want to just say, hey, Nets, take on Porzingis. We'll send you a big first-round pick. You eat his salary, and that's where you go. I think they'd rather turn him into somebody who has 20-ish million due next year, 20 million-ish due the year after that. And that allows them then in the summer of 2026, well, now we can trade that guy. And because we've dipped under the apron, we don't have all these crazy restrictions. You still have some because you don't want to trigger hard caps and all that other stuff. Sure. Or if you do, you have to work around them. But at least now we have more flexibility. We can move that guy out. We can go get somebody else. We have the 2032 pick. We can trade because we didn't get it frozen. We've got all these things. That's where I think they're going to be okay to, we'll take back enough salary where we dip, because I think they're going to want to reset around Tatum and Brown. Now, there is a world where this was Danny Ainge still running the team, I'd be talking about this completely different because he'd be like, cool, thanks for helping win that banner. We'll celebrate you every time you come back through town. Enjoy Utah or Indiana or, Orlando. Like, have fun, there because they offered me the best package and off we go. Brad Stevens, I think, is going to be a little bit more measured. I think his comments about Jaylen were fairly telling in his end of season presser, where he didn't really talk much about the future at all, except he said CBA and crap. It's I think he knows what he's facing, but he didn't want to get into it yet.
Yeah.
So I think for him with Jaylen Brown, it's going to be if the right deal is there where it's really good and it's going to help right now in some ways, and it's going to help down the line. I think I don't know that they hang up the phone immediately, but I don't know that he's on the phone calling everybody under the sun, offering up Jaylen Brown, just because I think they're going to look at it and say, are we going to get enough if we take that approach to really make it worth it? So that's why I think they reset on the fly a little bit.
It's interesting because my opinion is that this upcoming season is Jaylen's last.
It could be.
I think this is, and it's not like, I'm not trying to trade Jaylen Brown. Like I like Jaylen Brown. I'm not sitting there saying he needs to go. I'm just looking at the financial ramifications here. And, maybe it's Tatum. Maybe Tatum isn't what he used to be. And he's the guy that goes. But I feel pretty good about Tatum being the guy who stays and trying to kind of reset around him. I don't know. I don't know how you move forward with two guys making as much as they do. And like, I feel like they're going to want to get under the tax at some point.
Sure.
They're going to have to get on, like, they're a repeater, and you got a new owner who frankly scraped together pennies by the end to, get the deal done, and the deal's still not done. There's a whole second half of the team that needs to be sold.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like living in that repeater, or even if it's just a little bit over, why be a little bit over when you can just be under and reset it? Why be a little bit over the second apron when you can reset? Like, all of these little things. So there's going to be a time where you have to say, we're retooling at the very least. If it's not a rebuild, it's a retool. And that looks a lot different than the just financial thing. Like, if you're just retooling, then Jaylen Brown and Derek White become your two most tradable guys, because that's the most, those are the two guys who are going to get you the most return player wise, right?
Yes.
Holiday and Porzingis are the salary cutting. Those are the guys that you can move where you're just like, I don't want to say it doesn't matter because you want to get some quality back, but you're trying, you're taking back worse players. You're trying to pare salary down and go a different direction. So I feel like that tells you a lot. Like, if you see Derek White trade rumors, if you see Jaylen Brown trade rumors, then that's like, oh, okay, we're retooling, and that's the direction. If it's just Porzingis and Holiday, and I'll say Sam Hauser as well, because he, like you said, he fits neatly into a mid-level exception.
And everybody, like the Celtics for years, I think whenever we said, Brad, what are you guys looking for at the deadline? Shooting with size. Yeah. Right? Like, that was like a stock answer. Like, that's everybody, and that's exactly what Sam Hauser is. He's
an easy player to move.
Every play for everyone.
Yeah. Every team would want a Sam Hauser.
Not overpaid for what he is. Like, it's
right.
Yeah, it's fine. I will say this. I kind of laughed a little bit in my head there when you were like, if you start seeing Derek White trade rumors or Jaylen Brown trade rumors, I almost feel like then that almost in some ways I'm like, well, that's not happening then, because everything Brad Stevens has done, we didn't have any real wind of until it got done, right? It was like the Holiday one was completely different because you only needed to be, a 15-year-old with 2K to be like, oh, well, let's make that happen, right? Everybody saw that the minute the Holiday for Lillard trade was done. Everybody's like, Boston's going to get Holiday. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But the Porzingis thing came out of nowhere. The Derek White trade came way out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like that one was like, wait, what? Even the Malcolm Brogdon trade. I remember I was live on another podcast when that news broke. And we were like, I was like, hey, we have breaking news here. The Celtics are getting Malcolm Brogdon. Like, they do a really good job of kind of working very quietly, I think is the best way to put it. You might hear, and I'm not saying like if somebody's like, hey, they might trade Kristaps Porzingis. Yeah, well, we've all been talking about that for 3 months already.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you know, it's there. So you've got that part of it. But I think to your point with Jaylen Brown, this could be his last year. I think what we could see happen too is a world where we did our moves to get under the second apron, but we didn't tear the team down. We're still trying to be a playoff team this coming season, and we're feeling pretty good about it. Then let's say the year's just not going good. Let's say Jaylen Brown is, you know what, he's not a number one, right? Let's just say that's what this next season proves. Like Jaylen Brown couldn't lift the team beyond this 6th seed, and he had a nice season, but it wasn't great, and some inefficiency creeped in because he didn't have Tatum there to work with and take some of the pressure off and all those things. Then the Celtics may look at it and say, oh, you know what, 58, 60 million of Jaylen Brown, that's how we get 3 good players to put in around Tatum, and we kept Derek White, and now we've got Tatum and White, and we're adding these 3 good players. And, you know, because we made the other moves we made, we're able to keep Luke Cornett in the fold. And at some point Al Horford's going to retire, I imagine. I don't know that he's going to play forever like LeBron apparently is, but I mean, who knows? But then you're like, all right, now that's how we turn. That's how we flip it, right? We flip it that way. Or the other world, if we're going to be more positive, Jaylen comes out and he's awesome next season. Yep. The team is better than what we thought they'd be. They're like in the mix for the 4th seed or something. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, Tatum comes back. Now we get Jaylen Brown playing great. And yeah, we've got some moves around the edges, but we still get out of the second apron and we move forward that way. It's probably not going to be as fun next season as it was the past couple of seasons, you know, I'll say season and a half, because there was a point at this season where I was like, this isn't as much fun as last year. Yeah. You know, and that's where I, you know, half jokingly, but half serious, but very snarkily say, yeah, when you get frustrated in January of 2026 that the team's like a little over 500, not playing good, pop in your 2014 title DVD and watch it and have fun. Rerun Celtic City or whatever it is and have a blast. There you go. You know, watching that, like have a good time, because it's, you know, like that's, you know, where it's going to be, and get used to it too. No one is going to have super long windows. Everybody's talking right now in the wake of the Thunder rolling the Timberwolves in game 1. Oh man, this Thunder team's just there. This is what it's going to be for the next decade. It's not. They're going to have their own issues to deal with probably within about 2-3 years. I think teams are going to be set up to make a 2-3 year run, and then they're going to have to either fully reset if they get it wrong, or if they get it kind of right, retool, rebuild on the fly, take a little bit of a step back, and then get right back at it again. This is where what encourages me the most is I think Brad Stevens is pretty good at this, but I know Mike Zarin, Dave Lewin, Buddy Scott, all in that front office are really good at what they do. And Brad's best thing is, I think he's really smart enough to listen to those guys. And Austin does a good job with the draft. Like, he is smart enough to know, hey, I've got all the right guys doing this. If I could pick any front office to, man, what a mess this looks like, to figure it out over the course of the next few transaction cycles, I would probably pick the Celtics.
The last thing I'm going to say here as we wrap up is about the rumors and stuff. Celtics have been great about keeping things under wraps. It's always the other team. And I just think that there are going to be so many other teams involved.
And there could be.
That this year we're going to start hearing things because not everybody can keep their mouth shut. The Celtics have been very good about operating under the radar and like very targeted. We're going to talk to this team. We're going to keep it close.
Yeah.
With the moves that are being done now, they have no choice. Like, they might have a target, but like, you have to have a wide canvas.
That's the difference to me, is what you just said there. They don't have a choice. This time they have to make a move. When they made other moves, it was they made a move, right? It kind of came out of nowhere. Now
they found something that works, and they did it. Now it's like, all right, NBA, 29 teams. What do we got? Here's what I need. And like, one of those other teams is going to say something.
And like a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, it sounds weird to put it this way. He probably has wider appeal to more teams than Drew Holiday does, simply because he's on an expiring contract next year. So a lot of teams will look at that and be like, man, if I can get Boston to take on my guy who makes 25 million this year, but he makes 25 million next. When I say this year, I'm already talking the upcoming season. And then he's making 25 after that. I don't really want that 25 the year after that because I want to play in 26 free agency. Oh, I can do Porzingis. That's fine. Maybe we're not even trying to win. I don't really care. Like, let's go, like, kind of your thing, like chain a bunch of transactions together with teams that aren't great. And then you go that way. The Holiday, I think, has a smaller market, but is more meaningful for the teams who would be trying to acquire him. That's your teams like that are like, you know, we're like the Celtics were. We're Drew Holiday away from maybe making a title run. And you know what? There's a pretty good history now of it's worked twice in a row. Yep. So I think that's
Drew Holiday win a championship. That's it.
Right? I think that's what the Celtics are going to be selling other teams on is, hey, it might not be great 2 years from now when it's that final year, but he can lift you. He can get you to the next place you need to go. And that's where I think it's going to be okay. Whatever they do with those guys.
Keith, appreciate your time as always, my friend. Thank you so much. Sure. You can find Keith on Spotrac. You can find him at the Front Office Show. Check him out there. Always great information. More positive. For once, I'm the negative one on a podcast, which is a change. But good stuff there. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for watching. The show is free, available 5 days a week. So make sure you're subscribed. It's on YouTube. Watch the show there. Get into the comment section. Share your thoughts. There's a lot here to discuss. We're going to keep going through all of this offseason stuff all summer long here. So make sure you're subscribed. And I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.